Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Katie Snyder from Museum of the Grand Prairie in the Champaign County Forest Preserve District. We are so excited to bring this artist climate change panel discussion to you this evening as part of Pandemics Are a Portal to Change. Tonight's panel discussion was born of the virtual exhibition Pandemics Are a Portal to Change. This exhibition was inspired by a quote from Arundhati Roy. I'd like to read you just a little bit of that right now. Historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their worlds anew. This one is no different. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging our prejudice and hatred, our dead rivers and smoky skies, or we can walk through lightly, with little luggage, ready to imagine another world and ready to fight for it. Pandemics Are a Portal to Change. The exhibition is a collaboration between Krannert Art Museum, the College of Fine Arts and Design at UIUC, Museum of the Grand Prairie, the Urbana Free Library, and the Urbana-Champaign Independent Media Center. In the call for art, local artists were asked to consider our current struggles and reimagine how we might make a deep change and come out on the other side to reimagine our world, making progress towards change in any of the multiple pandemics that were going on in history right now: COVID-19, racism, sexism, economic hardships, struggle with mental health, and climate change, to name a few. Artists have the creativity and imagination necessary to visualize worlds without violence, threats, environmental collapse, racism, otherisms, and worlds with peace, justice, and unity thrive. Pandemics are a portal for change and a hard reset. So we are so excited to have with us this evening an artist from Pandemics Are a Portal to Change, whose work in the exhibition spoke to climate change and the environment, as well as a local colleague whose area of expertise is both the environment and climate change. So I'm going to introduce them now. First, we have Kim Curtis joining us this evening. Hi, Kim.
Hello.
Kim's work deals with the environmental aspects of human activity. As a painter and a sculptor, Curtis investigates the marks which accumulate in our spaces through both addition and subtraction, destructuration and preservation. Her work has been shown and collected throughout the U.S. and abroad, primarily through her 15-year relationship with Cassia K Art Projects in Chicago. Am I pronouncing that correct, Kim?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. A native Californian, she began her artistic career as a costume designer and a theoretical craftsperson, working throughout the San Francisco Bay Area, including 6 years as a master craftsperson for the San Francisco Opera. Curtis currently teaches in the Department of Theater at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and works in painting, sculpture, and illustration from her studio here in Urbana, Illinois. And we also have with us tonight Savannah Donovan. Hi, Savannah.
Hello.
Savannah Donovan is the Environmental Program Manager at Urbana Park District, Anita Purvis Nature Center, and serves as the President-elect of the Environmental Education Association of Illinois. She has a BS in Integrative Biology from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and an MS in Environmental Education and Interpretation from the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. She has been coordinating and leading environmental public programs in Illinois since 2009. Over the past year, she has co-founded and leads the Champaign County Climate Coalition and has co-authored Urbana Park District's CARES, which stands for Climate Action, Resilience, Education, and Sustainability Plan. Savannah is also a climate reality leader through the Climate Reality Project. So welcome, both of you. We're so glad to have you tonight. We're excited to hear about each of your work around climate change and the environment. Kim, could you start us out and tell us a little bit about your work?
Sure. I'm going to share my screen here. I could go on forever because I have lots of things that I think about and make, but I wanted to keep this short as just for context for our conversation. I'm primarily a landscape painter. As you mentioned in your introduction, I deal a lot with the history that accumulates in our landscapes. And if you look at, for instance, this painting on the left, the pinkish one, that's a multi-panel painting. There's 2 large panels on either side and 2 up the middle. The top one is actually made out of the pink insulation foam that people use for insulating homes. Wow. And that gets to, so a lot of my work is multi-panel, and a lot of it, again, in an effort to address sort of the accumulation of the marks and experiences left on our landscape, I embed a lot of materials into all of the panels. And I spend a lot of time kind of adding, subtracting, peeling things off, scraping things back, introducing new materials and forcing adaptation, such as that pink insulation foam. So a painting like this would have gone through a number of iterations, and many pieces of this painting might have been attached to other paintings or upside down somewhere else and reattached to this. And all of it is a way of sort of courting accident and finding sort of residual areas that can give me those traces I'm trying to get at. In response to this call for the pandemic artwork, I started thinking about what I was doing, not just during the COVID-19 lockdown, but somewhat before that, mainly in response to the Charlottesville situation. So the protests around the Confederate monuments that were being removed, and the protests and the counter protests. And, you know, it got me thinking, as I think it got the nation thinking, about who are our heroes, what are we commemorating, what do we choose to put on a pedestal, and just as a way of kind of exploring that idea and frankly giving myself some solace during the last presidency, I started making these little kind of maquettes of heroes of mine. So on the left would be Rachel Carson. Most people will know her as the author of Silent Spring. She's also responsible, her work is responsible for helping create the Environmental Protection Agency during the Nixon years, and the elimination of the use of DDT on our fields, which has unfortunately been found in jugs at the bottom of the ocean off California recently. And then on the right is Bill Mckibben, who's a current environmental activist. He founded an organization called 350.org. The huge protests you saw lining the streets around Central Park in New York City were organized by him. He's a really strong advocate for the environment and a really beautiful speaker and writer. So those were 2 I was thinking about. Of course, Greta Thunberg came on the scene a couple of years ago. She was actually my first little foray into making myself feel better by thinking about people doing wonderful things. And you'll see she's also seated on insulation foam, and she has her hat and her little school book are carved out of insulation foam as well. And then on the right is someone people might not be familiar with. Her name is Wangari Matai, and she was the first African woman to be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for her work reforesting parts of Kenya through a movement that is now called the Green Belt Movement, and is run by her daughter. And she received that prize in 2004. And as you can imagine, dealt with a lot of not only racism, but violence and political violence. It was a tough climb to get Kenya reforested, and they started, with 9 trees, and really made massive improvements in the landscape and the quality of life for the farmers in the area and the women in particular. So then I also I took some action on social media. I have to say I'm a pretty pathetic social media activist because I don't really like to, to be on social media much. But I started this little series called Actual Heroes. And they're actually drawn very quickly on the bottom of a particular yogurt cup that my son likes.
I've always wondered, Kim, because I follow this. I always wondered what those were actually on. Okay. Yeah,
they're just these little paper pieces that are on the bottom of these yogurt cups. And when I go to dutifully recycle, I pull them off and I think, God, these are perfect little like portrait-sized things. So. And on the left, you'll see that there's a hummingbird there, which, brings me into another idea of, heroes being non-human. So I did take a really fantastic environmental ethics course last semester through the Institute for Sustainability here on campus. And we talked a lot about, and in fact, there's a TED Talk tonight competing with this one on whether waterways should have personhood.
Oh, wow.
And, so the importance and the huge contribution that the natural world makes that is non-human. And so, again, kind of fooling around with this idea of putting non-human things like trees on pedestals. Let's see, let me think about my next slide. Okay, so one of the reasons why I love trees and consider them heroic is, of course, life wouldn't exist on Earth if it weren't for trees. They are the organism that provided the oxygen to allow humans to actually evolve on our planet. So instrumental in our lives. And then, of course, they are the carbon drawers down. They are busily munching away our carbon as we spew it out. And I'm sure a lot of your audience has read about the efforts to reforest areas of the world in order to draw down carbon more quickly. But the other reason why I turned to these enormous trees in my studio was just the joy of painting. I love painting, and again, during pandemic times, during crises, during anxiety, it's incredibly fruitful and productive for me to go into the studio and problem solve with paint and to play with kind of juicy slatherings of paint and medium and work out these questions and, consider my research and listen to news and podcasts and information while kind of dealing with problem solving of painting. And then Savannah will recognize this. There was a call for temporary public sculpture in and around both the Champaign and Urbana public parks. And as someone who's been following the plastic crisis pretty closely, I decided I was finally going to get my my plastic together in a form that could foster some sort of conversation around what we all have recognized at this point is an expanding crisis. So this is, it's a large monument. It's about, 7 or 8 feet tall. And the central piece is a deer. I found that deer. It was a Christmas lawn ornament that someone had curbed. So I threw it in the back of my car. It sat in my studio for about 5 years, beckoning me. And then when I started thinking more and more about the plastic crisis, and I came across an article I was reading in a hunting magazine about harvest, and I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if a hunter harvested a deer and instead of blood coming out, it just spewed plastic. Oh. So the entire monument is built out of salvaged styrofoam mostly. Unfortunately, the plastic stream coming out of my own home that I dutifully wash and set aside. And those capitals on either side, the silver capitals, are actually the insides of coffee bags, so the inner silver lining of coffee bags. Insulation foam, tape, Christmas ornaments, toys, all sorts of leftovers. There's 2 squirt guns there on top with some netting from a lemon bag. And then if you go to the side, you see this sign with a QR code. And the quote is, "Plastic is the fossil fuel industry's plan B." And this is what I really want to discuss today, because I think a lot of people, including myself, were not aware of just how severe the plastic crisis is and how it's not going away. And there really is no plan to make it go away. Mostly because it is fueled, for lack of a better word, by the oil and gas industry. It's a huge moneymaker for the oil and gas industry because it's a byproduct of fracking. The ethane that's used for plastic is basically a free byproduct of fracking. And so as we look toward electrifying our grid and using renewable resources, the oil and gas industry is turning toward plastic as their moneymaker. And so people like me who thought, okay, now that we all understand that plastic is a crisis and we've seen the photos of it washing up on beaches and emptying out of whales, and we've read the reports of it being in, women's breast milk. Yeah. We understand that it's a crisis and we understand that something needs to be done about it. But actually, in fact, the most powerful industry in the history of the planet is doubling down on this exact material in order to keep themselves lucrative. So the QR code then leads to a page on my website. And if you go into the page, I'm going to click on this link. It will show you, let's see. Here we go.
I love this, that you have actions. It's great.
Yeah, so it gives people who look at the monument, if they scan that QR code or they go to my website, it gives a whole kind of rundown of what is going on with the plastic industry. And then I have the "but we recycle" response to that. And then use of plastic and plastic materials in architecture. And then most importantly, a whole list of actions we can take with links provided. So one of them for local Champaign, Urbana Illinoisans is to call or contact Governor Pritzker and tell him to pass the Clean Energy Jobs Act, which just failed once again, just narrowly last week. So there's the first link is how to register to vote in Illinois. And then there's a number of other links that kind of explain how you can help and how you can be a part of the solution. And then also very importantly, the sources where I'm getting my information. So the articles where I'm getting information about ethane crackers and the fossil fuel industry. And then my sketch for the monument. So let's see, now I gotta close out of that and I go back to my PowerPoint, is that correct? And then I go back here. So in conclusion, I'm gonna give you a 20-second tour of this monument by clicking this play button. So you can see that the deer actually still worked, despite it having been curbed. The lights didn't work, but the head still worked. And that is that. There is, on the other side of the monument, there is a whole little info panel on greenwashing also. But that is that is my introduction to what I think about during lockdowns and climate crises.
Very cool. Were people sharing photos with you, pics from when they were going to the monument?
I did get some, I got a lot of passersby stopping and talking to me. And I will mention that I chose Weaver Park because it's so beautiful and there's an enormous prairie behind that forest. But also, when we were installing the piece, I found out that that forest behind the monument is original prairie savanna. So with trees dating back to the 1700s that I didn't know were in there. And there's an incredibly beautiful wetland back behind there. So I really encourage people to go out and take a hike. And it's also along the Kickapoo Rail Trail.
Right. And the Champaign County Forest Preserve District is part of the Kickapoo Rail Trail project. So we're excited about that. And my dog and myself love that park right there in that prairie. We always hang out there. So it's a great setting.
It's a really beautiful park that I don't think many people know about. So I encourage people to go out.
I mean, I kind of like it because it's real private, but I understand that the park district will probably like more people to get out there. But the prairie's a nice place to go for a private little walk. It's a great place. Well, thanks, Kim. There's a lot there. There's a lot to think about. Yeah. Savannah, would you like to share your work with us?
Yeah, Kim's given me so much to think about and react to also. I think I'll start by saying that similar to you, Kim, the pandemic really brought for me obviously a lot of emotions, but also a complete reprioritization of life and tasks and things, right? I lead public programs and in nature, right? That's my job. Get people together, take them out in nature. And that was just, shut down by the pandemic. And so, furthermore, I started working from home. I've got 3 little ones also at home. And so it was just a really different time for me to, like I said, reassess and reprioritize. But it gave me an opportunity to take Al Gore's Climate Reality Project, has a Climate Reality Leadership Core training program. And in the past, it had been an in-person experience, but the pandemic caused them to start offering that virtually and gave me the opportunity to attend that, where, I don't think I ever would have made the trip before or paid that expense but I had no excuse not to, right? Everything was virtual. So I did that and concurrently at the Park District shifted my focus away from traditional programming and we canceled our summer camp last summer and really shifted towards climate action and developing this new climate action plan for the Urbana Park District. And so I do want to share it with you. It's not going to be nearly as beautiful or as exciting as Kim's work. But I hope that
it's exciting. It's just exciting in a different way.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I hope you can, appreciate it for what it is. It's a plan. It's maybe not a piece of art, but all right. So here is our Climate Action Resilience Education and Sustainability Plan. It was developed over the course of just over a year and adopted by the Urbana Park District Board in April of this year. We had a lot of people working on this, so our steering committee, many people, and then we have a whole list of experts in the field who provided interviews as kind of key informants into climate action, resilience plans, sustainability plans. This kind of planning can take a lot of names and a lot of forms, and we really kind of amalgamated it all together here. So I'm not going to take you through all of this, but if you do read this document, it's available on the Urbana. Oh, thanks, Pat, for sharing the link. It is available online, and you can read more about the process, our concerns about our local population and meeting the needs locally that we see. So it is a really local-based plan. We talk about our vision and our values. A lot of it lot of climate health, environmental health that relates to human health, animal health, overall ecosystem health. And that is kind of this one health concept that we're all connected. We're all part of this big picture together. And so we really need to address all of these things in sort of a multifaceted way. And then we can all benefit from the effects as well. Our plan has 3 main pillars, and I'm just going to briefly show you these here, because under these pillars are where all of our individual goals and objectives are nested. So these are the 3 like overarching themes that you'll see in the plan. And I'm going to spend the most time talking about the first one, which is communicating climate action through internal practices, public outreach and programs, and collaborative partnerships. So I'm going to get a little bit into those goals and objectives because they really pertain to this pandemic as a portal to change. Mm-hmm. We also have lots of goals centered around protecting and strengthening our natural environment. So just as stewards of natural areas, that's kind of something that we at the Park District already do naturally. But we're taking a more concerted look at what we're doing and making, measurable goals to continue making progress in those areas. It's more about intentionalizing things that we're already doing. So one effect will be to reduce our carbon footprint, to improve biodiversity and air and water quality as well. Sorry, one of my kids is trying to bust in on me here. You can't talk to me right now.
I love this about the pandemic, world. I love dogs coming in, babies coming in. It's reality.
Yeah, well, the other thing I was going to say before, I'm going to go ahead and derail, since she derailed this anyway. I do have 3 little kids, and climate action has become something that's really personal to me because I see the gravity of the situation that we're in right now, and I want nothing but, a bright and healthy future for my kids. And it's really about them and all of the generations that are coming behind us. They have to walk in our wake in the path of what our actions do now. So that's why I really personally feel like this is an incredibly important time to be thinking about these things. All right, so I'm going to continue on. The last one is about conserving resources. That's kind of the first stop shop, right? That's where we all kind of go to when we think about those easy changes we can make is reduce, reuse, recycle, right? Which, by the way, those are, when you say reduce, reuse, recycle, that is like a best order that you go in. So number 1, our goal should always be to reduce our consumption, reduce the amount of packaging or plastic that we buy, that we accept into our homes. Number 2, then, once you've bought it, reuse it as many times as you can. Use it for something new before you take that last step, which is recycling. I'm totally infiltrated out here in my sunroom now. Usually they're pretty good, but I have twin 2-year-olds. So I don't know if you've ever had one 2-year-old, but you put 2 2-year-olds together during a pandemic. I mean, our daycare is still not open, so they're like they're like dogs that need to get out a lot and run around and see new things. All right. So just really quickly, the last thing I really wanted to show you was within this planning pillar of communicating climate action, and there's lots of ways that we can go about this. I mentioned our first goal is to practice what we preach. We're going to demonstrate and communicate through our internal practices that which we are hoping other people do as well. Next is to provide outreach and programming opportunities to communicate climate action to diverse audiences. Lots of goals and objectives. This is all kind of laid out in a format that is measurable with responsible staff groups so that we know when we have achieved our goals. Next is to provide leadership and public information to advocate for environmental sustainability and climate action. But here in this goal number 4 is what I really wanted to bring your attention to. When we created these goals and objectives, it came out of sort of an organic process of asking our staff, of asking through public input and presentations to different community groups, what is our plan need to contain, what are some ideas for goals and objectives. And this theme of art as a means of communication really rang through this pillar here. And I'm not sure if maybe this is something that's somewhat unique to our community, that this is such a kind of a high importance. But I just think it's really wonderful. So our goals here, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. The goal is to communicate environmental topics and opportunities for climate action through art, sculpture, and interpretation. The objectives involve promoting youth artistic creativity, just as Kim has done with her harvest exhibit at Weaver Park. Use art and sculpture as a means to communicate environmental concerns. Mm-hmm. So check that one off the list. Just kidding. We look forward to doing so much more of this in the future. So I'm going to stop sharing unless anybody has any special requests. But, the other piece, I don't want to make you dizzy by scrolling through this quickly. The last piece I want to show you is that this document itself is also an education piece. It gives information about our process and our timeline, how we're going to implement it, so that other park districts, agencies, organizations can try to develop their own similar plan through a similar process. But it also is itself an education piece. So it includes a glossary of key terms. If you aren't familiar with some of the terminology or the science behind climate change concepts, here we've got a little digest for you. Everything is sourced, and we talk about ecosystem services, which is something that Kim, without saying that term, you mentioned it a couple times when you were speaking earlier. What does our environment do for us, right? It supports our lives and that of all animals and plants around us. So, it's got a little chart of all the different things that how biodiversity, directly relates to public health. It is in our benefit to, maintain a biodiverse and healthy ecosystem. And we do talk about the correlation between climate change, pandemics, and the One Health concept as well. So I encourage you to look through this plan if you are interested in learning more, and I'm happy to answer any questions and kind of start a conversation with you, Kim.
That's great. That's great. And behind the scenes, we have our friend and colleague, Pat King, who is, if anyone has any questions, he's going to be able to put them right up here for us so we can see them. And he's helping us along as we go. That's amazing, Savannah. Like, there's so much there, There's so much going on. Are you starting? This isn't one of the questions I told you I was going to ask, but I'm just wondering. Okay. I'm just wondering, are you starting all that like right now as you're bringing folks back to the park district and your camps and all that? Are you starting this right now?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been adopted. We do hit the ground running. We are back to doing summer camps and a lot more programming at the park district. But it's something that a lot of our staff has collaborated to create, and that we also gave, sought feedback from every one of our full-time staff, and then a number of part-time staff, as well as, like I said, the community, our board, our Urbana Park District advisory committees. All these people hopefully have some investment in, us making sure that we are achieving the goals that we're setting out to achieve.
Yeah, that's great. So you have wide buy-in from the community and from all the stakeholders, which is super important. That's
absolutely.
Okay, well, I have a couple questions, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So, Kim, you kind of touched on this before, but I kind of want to ask you more intentionally. What did you learn, or what are you hoping to take away from living through this pandemic time? How did the pandemic or the pandemics, specifically the ongoing pandemic of climate change, how does that inform your art? You talked a little bit about that, or the artistic process.
Yeah, I think during this lockdown and in thinking about Charlottesville and a lot of the, I would teach in the Department of Theater. We had a very intense anti-racism training this last semester. And in thinking about all of those things and in coming to a studio every day and thinking, what should I do now? What do I make? More and more pronounced by COVID, I really started reassessing how my status as an individual and how I fit in my community, and not just me, but all of us, how we either have power or don't have power as individuals, and same with responsibility. So what responsibility do we have? And one of the examples that I will share that I came across in my research for the monument was, Savannah, you're probably too young for this, but I grew up in the 70s, and there was an incredibly successful ad campaign during the 70s that featured a Native American picking up a piece of litter with a tear rolling down his face, right? And so, the implied message there was, hey, people, stop littering, don't throw your garbage on the ground. Mm-hmm. But as it turns out, according to the archives that are here housed at the university's communications department, that entire ad campaign was produced by the beverage industry. And it was produced because they knew they were going to start a deluge of single-use packages. And they wanted to make sure that they foisted that responsibility onto the consumer instead of keeping it themselves, right? So that campaign was sort of a precursor to the dawn of all of this single-use packaging, telling people that they needed to take responsibility, that it's my responsibility to deal with my yogurt cup. While, of course, this huge industry backed by, of course, again, oil and gas, are doubling down and tripling down on the production and trying to get us to consume as much as possible, and then using their profits and their power to undermine any sort of legislation around recycling, deposits, reduction of packaging, all of those things, right? So foisting the responsibility onto individuals, and which, of course, when you read that, you think, okay, I'm powerless. And it can be really frustrating. But again, that story is brought forth by an individual. Mm-hmm. So those stories are brought to us by journalists. They're brought to us by performers. They're brought to us by visual artists, by singers. So although I do often, and I think we all often feel powerless in the face of these huge corporations and governments, I do also see the power that we all have in bringing these ideas to conversations like this, to museums, to parks, to performance halls, and really engaging in these conversations. And I think it is not just the power that we have as individuals, but it is our responsibility as individuals to keep these conversations fact-based and interesting, and offer ideas and curiosities, not just lecture, listen a lot, and really create these formats where we can really have a conversation about what our future looks like. And so that that was something I was thinking about. When we're in lockdown and we're all isolated, we start thinking about, who we are as individuals, how we can make a difference, how we can't make a difference. And then, of course, with the monuments, thinking about, different kinds of individuals. We've got our heroes. We've got our Rachel Carsons and our Wangari Matais, our Martin Luther King Jr.'s. We've got those people who have a lot of power and the talent to lead. But again, we also have a lot of people who aren't working in areas where they have access to a microphone or a newsprint or a gallery space or something where they can engage with the audience. And those people I would call supporters, right? So, and that's all of us. So again, the power and the responsibility of the individual to either lead or support. And by supporting, I mean donating money, making sure that the organizations that are doing the work on our behalf are funded. And it's not just organizations, it's not just environmental organizations, it's the arts and the humanities, which are perpetually underfunded and undervalued, despite the fact that they are the font of communication. There is no communication without the arts and the humanities. So making sure that our departments are funded, that grants are available for artists, that grants are available for park districts, that people with a microphone have the support and frankly, the finances to do the work that we need them to do. And that power and that responsibility falls on all of us as individuals. It's not just the people who can lead the protest marches or or the presidents of corporations. One of the things that I think is really interesting and that I sort of dawned on me during all of this work, both as an artist and showing up at council meetings and school board meetings and what have you, is there are individuals everywhere that can affect change. And even in the biggest, most evil corporations and governments, there are people that really do want to make change, and they need us to support them. They need us calling, they need us writing, they need us protesting in the streets so they can show those visuals. And we are not squeaky wheels, and it's not a negative thing to get up and complain about something or bring light to a problem. Because those people need that kind of support in order to make change within their own situations, whether it be a business or a government. So I just a reassessment and kind of a recalculation of how I operate as an individual and how we need to be thinking about what we can contribute to our community as individuals.
Savannah, did you want to?
Yeah, I was going to say, Kim, you kind of touched on a concept that I see come up again and again in climate action and climate change education, and that is the importance of conversations and talking about it. And so, you mentioned using your voice, but really, at the base level, like everybody can do that. You can normalize conversations about climate change. You can normalize thinking about it. But we want to also avoid despair and doom and gloom, and instead, come together to realize that we can, with our cumulative actions, our cumulative voices, have, an even stronger impact. We can, we will, we must.
Well, and I think that's where the arts come in, because, some of my favorite artists, whether it be visual artists or performers, are people, and what I've kind of attempted to do with that monument are the artists who make things attractive and fun and simultaneously deliver a message that is important, right? So singers like Ani DeFranco, maybe, that deal with some pretty hard information, but you're singing along and you're humming along, and it's a real skill to try to get messages across that will actually land on people and compel them to do something. And I think that's, again, where the arts and humanities come in, because, I was just reading actually an article about a scientist out at UC Santa Cruz who was dealing with pandemic science. And one of the things he said was the reason why he was effective was that he had a liberal arts background, and he had the ability to tell a story well. And I think we can all agree that part of that one of the major problems with the pandemic was our inability to get the message straight. So how do you do that? You do that by engaging people who are storytellers,
right?
And storytelling through dance, through music, through visual arts. People who can actually get people to think differently and inspire people, and not bludgeon them with doom and gloom, but
right. Yeah, that's important. And I'm just thinking, I'm agreeing with you here, and I'm thinking about the ways in which all this has kind of just changed. All these pandemics have kind of changed our lives and our ways of thinking. And I was just wondering if anybody that's listening tonight has any stories they wanted to talk about how the pandemic changed their lives or their work, that they'd want to put in the comments, because I'm really curious about that. And I'm drawn to what you said, Kim, when you said that it's not just these certain people with the microphone that's going to make the difference, because it's you, it's me, it's everybody that's listening tonight. So I'm just wondering what other people are thinking about it. So if you have anything you want to share about what you learned from living through the pandemic and how the climate change has informed your art or other things you do, we'd love to hear about that. And I see we have some response. Thanks, Jason. So Jason Lindsay says, I found most art and communication about climate change is a focus on the coasts and mountains. Oh, interesting. Yeah. I've been exploring art and climate change from the perspective of the Midwest. And, I think the Midwest gets a bad rap sometimes, don't you all? It's like, if you don't have, and I love the mountains, and believe me, I love big bodies of water, but there's so much to love about the Midwest. I agree with you, Jason.
Well, Jason's work, I will say, is incredibly beautiful. He's an excellent photographer, and one of my favorite series of his is a series of photographs taken from, I don't know if the drone or flyover of the retiling of our agricultural fields.
Oh, so wow.
When you talk about, the Midwest getting a bum rap or whatever, the Midwest is the heart of industrial food, which is, again, oil and gas consumption and soil loss and water pollution through erosion, and and that affects all of us. It doesn't just doesn't stay in the Midwest. And I really encourage people to look at Jason's website to see the kind of work that he's doing also, because it also promotes these conversations around how we grow our food.
Yeah, that's really cool. So I haven't gotten a chance to look at your work yet, Jason. If you wanted to share your website, we'd be happy to share that here, and then folks could take a look at it. That'd be great. We have another comment from Nacha. The pandemic has helped me better connect with other design educators and join forces to create projects together. Also, the ability to join talks from anywhere. You talked about that a little bit, Savannah, has expanded my knowledge of others. And I would agree with that, because this production tonight is part of a big collaboration with the Museum of the Grand Prairie, Champaign County Forest Preserve, CAM, just a whole bunch of our organizations. So I've had that opportunity as well. I see that as a silver lining. When we're looking for silver linings from the pandemic, I see that being able to collaborate with other people about ideas, and to be able to go to conferences and hear talks from people that I would have never in a million years been able to see before. Okay, Japhia, I'm probably going to say your name wrong. I'm sorry about that.
It's Japhia.
Japhia, you know Japhia. Okay, good. You know her. So if you know somebody and I'm butchering their name, please help me. I work in medical education and teach on climate change and health impacts. And the pandemic just highlighted the shared drivers and shared solutions and magnified disparities. Yeah. Yeah. So true, right? So everybody's thinking about, I think we're all thinking about things, right? I mean, haven't you all just been, and when you have more time to think, we're coming out of it now, but, which is a little jarring as well in a way to me. I don't know about you. Okay. So if you all have other things you want to comment about that, we'd love to see those keep coming. But I was just going to ask you, Savannah, and you touched on this a little bit, but how does environmental action, community, and the arts intersect in the Urbana Park initiatives? I know you talked about the Urbana Outdoors initiative. Do you have other things that are going on in the back of your mind?
I mean, we're kind of always interested in art at our Urbana Park District. Arts and culture and community programs is a really strong segment of what we do. And at the same time, we're also very fortunate to have a local park district that really values environmental education and stewardship of natural areas. So we were kind of already poised in this position to, be leaning towards art as a vehicle for communication about those important topics. But also, I think we're a product of our community, and these are things that are really valuable to our community in Urbana-Champaign and Champaign County on a broader scale. We do seem to have, a lot of people who care a lot about arts and culture and the environment. So it's just a perfect marriage. This great outdoor outdoors. Sorry, the great outdoor art. I can't even say it. The great outdoors.
All the time, yeah.
And the pandemic's to a portal to change. These are just really wonderful opportunities. I think we want to really be expanding our climate change education programs as well, and this will be a good opportunity to do that in a concerted way.
Cool. Well, we only have a couple minutes left, so I just have one last question for the both of you and also for the audience. As society returns to normal, I hate that because what does that mean, right? But whatever that will mean, what would you like to retain from, we've touched on a little bit, but what do you hope not only yourself, but society keeps? Like I personally don't want to just go back to normal, because normal was not, there was lots of problems with normal, right? So what would you like to keep? What would you like to keep, not only in reference to your art or your work, Savannah, with the environment, but also in reference to the role of nature in our lives? What do y'all think about that? And either one of you or the audience could answer us.
Well, I think that we all got a really stark look at what the stakes are for us. Yeah. This pandemic rocked everybody's worlds, and some more than others. And it's the situation is not going to get any better. I don't think there is a normal anymore. I mean, it's a spectrum. But I think because of that, and we can see, the consequences of our action and our inaction, we can see how they play out now. And so for me, it means being more vocal and being, my friends and family know that I'm very vocal, but all of us have, again, the responsibility to speak up and really push for things to be different. And that means talking to the people you work with and moving up the ladder and talking to the people that have more power than you. And I think that the urgency of this situation with the pandemic gives us, the justification we need to have those conversations and say, I'm sorry to rock the boat, but we don't have the luxury to ignore it anymore or to be polite.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I see in the comments, Jan says, let's continue to drive cars less. Yes, yes. And Natasha says, let's have meetings on Zoom instead of driving. Yes, I agree with both of those. Also, I think this has been an opportunity for us to really consider the type of world we want to live in and what is our future. We want to live in a healthy planet, right? And health it's all interconnected. So the climate, our pandemic of COVID-19, like they are very interrelated. And so we can envision something brighter and better for our future, and take the time and prioritize taking the time to work towards that vision.
To that end, Savannah, I would like to get rid of the word environmentalist.
Yeah, I also don't love that word.
Who is an environmentalist? I mean, if you care about air and you care about water and you care about the soil that your food is grown in, that makes you an environmentalist. So let's stop acting as if these people are this small group of radicals that are opposing Republican legislation and talk about, I don't know, we got to come up with a different word, but it's not environmentalist because it makes it sound like it's this group of people that are on the fringe. Right. We're all environmentalists.
Hopefully, that's what I was going to say. Hopefully that's all of us. Well, we're about out of time, but I would really like to thank the two of you. We're so grateful to Kim Curtis and Savannah Donovan for being here, for all the great comments from all our friends online. We're so happy about that. And also to Pat Kane behind the scenes, running everything for us. And we hope that you'll take a minute to look at the exhibition, Pandemics Are a Portal to Change, where Kim's work is and so many others. And I'm Katie Snyder from Museum of the Grand Prairie in the Champaign County Forest Preserve District. Thanks, everybody, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks.